hereby called to order. We have the presence of a quorum. The meeting has been duly called, and notice of the meeting has been posted for the time and manner required by law. We will start with information items this evening. We will have an internal audit update. Who's going to provide that for us? Mr. Rice.
Mrs. Tasson, do you want an update on our activities to date or an update on the action item?
I think both.
Both?
If you're prepared to do both, let's go ahead and do both.
Yes. Well, I would just like to comment to the board. In 2016, Board President Kristen Tasson invited Mr. Rosenthal and myself, and she served on the audit committee. And we undertook several audits at that time, including the safety and security facilities audit, the construction job site safety audit, the Jacobs program management monitoring audit, and the risk management and fixed assets audit. The status of those audits are, most of them are complete and will be presented to the board at the July 17th board meeting. Safety and security is one of them. Construction job site safety audit is complete. The Jacobs program management audit is almost complete as soon as the administration has had a chance to respond. And they will be presented on July 17th. The risk management and fixed assets is underway, and that will be, it's anticipated it would be presented to the board in October. Earlier this year, the facilities and operation audit was presented to the board. That was a holdover from last year. The budget for internal audits in 2016-17 was $280,000. Since the May 2017 board election, Board President Kristen Tasson has invited me to return to the audit committee along with Jason Burdine and herself. We put together audits that we recommend be performed for the 2017-18 year. Those audits were more than I thought we should be spending. I polled my associates, and I recommend that we approve a special education audit, a technology audit, a human resource follow-up, and then program management from Gibson Consulting. You may recall that we no longer have any internal staff. We had an internal auditor. So we are running a pretty lean operation, and Gibson is providing administrative services for us. And the current proposed budget for audits for the 2017-18 year is $300,500. The thing to remember about audits is that it's like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. This porridge is too hot, this porridge is too cold, and this porridge is just right. So that's what we're attempting to do with the audits. They are really best practices that we're looking at, and we don't want to overwhelm the administration with audits, too many audits at the same time. Some audits cannot begin immediately. For example, the construction job site safety audit was authorized last year, but really had to wait until the beginning of this year because we didn't have any construction underway at an occupied school. Mainly they were greenfield sites, and the contractor is was mainly responsible for that. So we had to wait for that audit to really gear up, and that's why sometimes the audits cannot be concluded in the same fiscal year. So having said that, we base the audits on things that we think are important to capture the low-hanging fruit, and not too many, not too few. We try to find the sweet spot every year. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions anyone may have.
Mr. George.
I just have one question, Mr. Rice.
Yes, sir.
I see that there are few items like special education, technology, and all added this year. And what is the procedure you pick an item? How do you?
Well, the procedure is to sit down with the audit committee and consider the activities that we have underway. For example, we know that Dr. Hill has done a good job of revamping special ed. That's also a topic being discussed at the state level with vouchers and why kids, some people think they should have vouchers to go to special ed. So we want to do an audit on that to report on best practices that we're doing. It seems that it is a timely thing to do. That's for an example of that one. On technology, we know Mr. Pham and his team have been hard at work, and they've recently renovated the district's computer room, which it was sorely needed, and they brought an emergency generator and everything else. We've had a tour, but these audits often confirm, and once published, they're out in the public domain, that support the actions that this administrative staff has taken to achieve some of the strategic initiatives that we have asked them to. And then the human resources follow-up. Mr. Spears has done a good job of initiating a human resources program and plan, and this is just a follow-up to see how that is going and is underway. And so those are the three. We had an opportunity to include the child nutrition, but it was my recommendation that be removed because I felt special ed and technology was more important and the human resources was more important, and we can get to this child nutrition next year. Gail Stotler runs a pretty tight ship, and we've had no issues in that area. So part of it is subjective, but it's done with the consensus of the committee.
Mr. Rice, if I may add too, Gibson Consulting does a really good job of putting forth for us a sort of timeline, a management timeline of when things might need to be done. And Mr. Rice has worked really closely with them over the last few years since he served as chair.
I just want you to know that I was not saying anything wrong about it.
No.
And I was just trying to find out, I'm 100% supportive of this, and you're absolutely right about that. And I was asking if in the future, let's say I feel something important, so is that I bring it to this committee's notice, or
yes,
that was my question. Maybe I went around it,
Okay.
Made it.
Well, yes, I would encourage you to do that. Bring it to the committee. Okay. The committee's going to change every year. The committee serves at the pleasure of the board president.
Absolutely, Gibson Consulting did a phenomenal job. No question whatsoever. I was just trying to find out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. George. Additional questions, Mrs. James.
So just to pick up on what you were saying, Mr. George, and I think, Kristen, you were kind of getting to this too, that the Gibson has given the board before and the audit committee like an audit universe, sort of like all the potential topics or areas that you might want to audit. And then a couple of years ago, they did a risk assessment of our district in particular to find out, well, where were our highest needs and, what things could we put off to the future. And I think that's maybe one of the tools. Is that right, Mr. Rice?
Yes.
One of the tools he uses to try to figure out what's been done, or what should be done. So, my question then, related to all that, tying all that together, is, okay, special ed, I think that's a great idea. I agree that it's important from the state. The state's looking at that. But I thought that the administration had done an internal assessment or used a consulting firm or something to do an assessment of the special ed program. And I wondered if this is the same type of thing, or if we're doing something different, or we've implemented enough program and we've gone along farther down the line that this is warranted, or is maybe the timing wrong and we should wait a little longer? I would just like to know that from your perspective.
Yes. So we've actually worked with a couple of different consultants during my tenure. Actually, before I got to the district, there had been a study done by an external organization. I don't know that much of that was ever implemented, but we did then during my second and third year back in probably 14, 15 time frame. We pulled some of that out. We've used that as part of our strategy going forward. We've also used a consultant to help guide and prepare some of our planning and work going forward. So I think we've done some really good work. Personally, I think it's in a good time to kind of get an independent audit. The work we've done before was more consultation and business consultation, if you will, and an internal support for staff, whereas this is an independent view from the governance view for the board to look at compliance, best practices. Are we fulfilling the board's vision, mission, and policy? So and I do think that we're at a good place in our implementation to go forward with this an audit of this nature.
Okay, that's good, because I know this was a topic that came up quite a bit also in the curriculum audit, the 2012, and then we had the studies of kind of what best practices, what we weren't doing. So if you feel like it's a good time, I just want to use our money wisely.
Agreed.
So I just want to be sure. And the same thing crossed my mind on technology, because we had hired the Burning Institute. We've done a couple of evaluations of our technology situation, but maybe the situation is the same in terms of where we've done a lot of things and we've implemented some of it, and maybe we need to sort of see where we are. Is that the thinking, or again, is there some different timing?
The technology internal audit, Mr. Rice, you may want to address this from the scope.
I will just say that the audit that the Board of Trustees, as you know, is responsible for the audit function. And the administration may have had audits performed in the past. They sometimes have audits done on their own behalf. But then the board comes back and audits a board audit. It's not an administration audit, it's a board audit. So it's my thinking, in my opinion, and Mr. Rosenthal and Mrs. Tasson agreed with me, that in light of the significant work that Mr. Pham has done, I think it's time that we have an audit performed, and everybody should know that when these audits are performed, they are looking for best practices, and they're looking at things that have been implemented, and sometimes recommendations are made, and the administration has a chance to respond to that. But in large part, these audits often verify and confirm what's been done, and I think that's an important part of what we do as the audit committee, because by state law we're required to perform this function. And I have every confidence that this technology audit will reveal the good work that Mr. Pham has been doing. And also, I'd like you to go back in time to 2005, when the technology in the district was needed a lot of work, and we're just fortunate that we were able to, number one, include a significant technology piece in the budget that passed in 2014, and that we've had Mr. Pham and his team here to execute that piece. Notably, it is the renovation of the computer room, where all the data is kept and stored, and the wide area networks and everything else that they've been doing throughout the schools. So that's why we decided to do a technology audit.
Okay, and thank you for sharing that. So I understand that, and I also understand that the purpose of these audits is not to catch people doing things wrong, but is to make the organization better, and in a spirit of continuous improvement, to try to help us to do our job better and help each of the departments in the organization to do a better job in educating our kids. So, so I guess so long as we have that attitude, then we're going to work together to try to always be making things better. So, thank you for those explanations, Mr. Rice.
Thank you, Mrs. James. I would also add, Mr. Rice, if I may, that we talked about this audit in the context of the bond as well, coming off of the bond and spending of the bond funds, that we felt like it was timely as we were getting towards the end of that to see how those monies had been spent, how staffing had been spent, how the data was now being stored, and those types of things. So I think that was another part of our conversation. Do we have additional questions from the board members? Okay. Hearing none, we will now convene in closed session under the Texas Open Meetings Act, Chapter 551, and those sections listed in the agenda, and for the purpose of a private consultation with the board's attorney on any or all subjects or matters authorized by law. We are now convened in closed session.